I found myself more or less out on the street wondering what to do. And so I fell back on something that I had had a little experience with as a kid, and that was gold mining. I enjoy living in the middle of nowhere. I enjoy the detective work and trying to figure out where it's coming from and where it might be found, and I had some luck with that. I was able to nail down some properties that turned out to be relatively valuable, and it was during that time that, and this was 25, 30 years ago, I bought this property and this shop. And so then, little by little, I became slightly more civilized and moved in closer to town and living here. And now I have electricity and cell phones and everything. But for a long time, I lived probably like someone might have in the 1800s. In the early 90s, the price of metals started to drop again, and nobody wanted mining claims anymore. And so I began looking around for something else that I could do. I had actually thumbed through a knife magazine and wondered if that wasn't something that I might get away with. I made it a point to become acquainted with knife makers. There's a fella in Boise that's since become a good friend, Chris Reeve. And I simply looked him up in the yellow pages and went to his shop and introduced myself.
I wondered, who the hell is this guy?
And told him that I wanted to be a knife maker. And Chris said, yeah, well, everybody wants to be a knife maker. He said, have you ever made a knife? I said, well, no. He said, well, go make a knife and then bring it to me and show it to me. So I did. I made a knife, and so a few weeks later I took it back to show Chris, and he looked it all over this way and that, and he said, that's the worst knife I've ever seen. So this knife is the one that Chris Reeve scolded me about. It's the first knife I made. Little by little, I kind of got it figured out to where I could make a knife. Gavin wasn't particularly attracted to the idea of making knives in the beginning, and he wondered why I would even want to make knives, or anybody else for that matter. And so I helped him design his first knife and drug him through it so that he had made one knife mostly by himself. So then he took it to school, got the teacher's permission, and everybody went wild for it. The teachers loved it, the kids loved it. He actually sold maybe 3 to principal and a teacher, and then a magazine editor tuned in on him because he was so young. He was 12 or something. And so they did a nice big article about Gavin Hawk and pictures of the very first knife that he made and the wooden knife that I made him make to practice. And so little by little he began to realize that this was working out okay.
Gavin has developed into a brilliant knife maker now as he's grown up.
We call our knife making enterprise G&G Hawk, for Grant and Gavin Hawk.
Yeah, every knife show we go to, we have a certain group of people that always approach us wondering what's the latest thing. What do you got now? What's the new trick that you have?
Our niche has become that of the mechanical part. And so people are expecting us to come up with ever more ways to do something so simple as open and close the blade of a folding knife.
This knife was the first design that my dad and I actually collaborated on. And so this knife is the first one that has G&G Hawk on it. So this is really when I started to get a more active role in the whole knife making and knife designing process. I guess we kind of consider ourselves more inventors than knife makers. And so even though we're expressing ourselves through knives. We always kind of think we're more just inventors. They'd probably be surprised at where we actually make our knives. Our knives look like they're built in a space-age machine shop because our mechanisms are really kind of out there, and a lot of machine work and final touch and finish, but yet we're working in an old barn with little hideaway rooms and fireplaces. Everything's really temporary because we don't tool up for a large production run. We're just making 20 knives. So we build throwaway tooling, whatever we have to do just to get a part without worrying about making a whole bunch of it, because next week we'll be making something totally different.
There's no immediate danger of running out of ideas. It seems like we can get them faster than we can execute them. As a matter of fact, I think I see a lot of parallels between knife designing and amateur engineering and gold prospecting, because in every case we're mostly looking for something that's already there. It's less an act of creation to engineer or design something than it is an act of discovery.